Hello everyone, it's Yaroslav and Philosophy Man YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about a film called Jarhead. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal and tells a story about a young man from a middle-class family who decides to become a marine and enlists. I emphasize this middle-class background because it's important both for the plot of the film and the, to say, moral consequences of the story. So he enlists and goes to the marine training camp, which is actually one big quote of a classic film by Stanley Kubrick called Full Metal Jacket. In both films, it is shown how new recruits are being formed into a material for army by means of very strict rules and all kinds of psychological abuse. But Kubrick's version is more gloom. It contains a scene where one of the soldiers commits a suicide, though there are also casualties in the film with Gyllenhaal, but the general atmosphere of Kubrick is more sarcastic, while Jarhead is more irony about the very idea of army. One of the reasons of Gyllenhaal's hero to be abused is that he is from the middle-class family, so-called, we may say wealthy family, while most of the recruits are from very simple background. Why it is important? This film is actually a reminiscence of the classic plot in literature and films of the first half of the 20th century. I mean things like Hemingway's novels, Dos Passos novels, and so on. The so-called heroization of the war, finding the epic side of the war. Gyllenhaal's protagonist wants something he doesn't know even what he wants. He sort of wants to break the chains, the psychological chains of his background by entering the epic story of army recruit. But as it will be shown later, this is a false choice for him, which brings him nothing but a giant minus to his life. To understand why it is so, I should retell the second half of the film. So after being sent to Kuwait because the first Gulf War already started with Saddam Hussein, Gyllenhaal's protagonist finds out that even the real war is not the thing that he thought it is. They spend most of their time in a mundane routine and don't have real fights up to the end of the campaign. But there is a lot of absurdity and boring stuff to do. He also loses his girlfriend, who starts to flirt and then to have a romance with another man, because Gyllenhaal's hero is so far from a home. Up to the end of the film, Gyllenhaal, though being a scout sniper, does not kill anyone, and it is emphasized in the plot of the film. He and his partner wants to make a mission and kill Saddam Hussein's officers, but instead that soldiers are killed by airstrike. Gyllenhaal's hero is traumatized by the war. He saws his fellow companion soldiers do not treat civilians. They treat civilians quite harsh. They do not respect the dead bodies, and so on and so on. He is also sort of broken down by the routine and the continuing psychological abuse by officers and fellow soldiers. It all ends as it began, absurdly. The war is over. He and his partner did not kill anyone. They cannot actually call themselves warriors, while they had the initial aim of, while going to the Marine Corps, to call themselves warriors. And soldiers are just partying and then returning to their lives. What can be said about the moral consequences, the moral parts of the story? If to say in sort of teenage slang, Gyllenhaal's hero wants to put himself in more a cool social role by breaking the rules and entering an absolutely different sphere of activity concerning his usual social role. And we may say that the words like being cool are not appropriate, but there are some different scientific words coming from the philosophical anthropology. So in primitive egalitarian societies like tribes in Papua Guinea, there is so-called ritual of initiation. So a young boy cannot be called a man, and he cannot take part in the political and sacred life of tribe before he becomes a huntsman or a warrior. And this process of becoming huntsman is initiation. It is either killing an animal or killing a enemy from the competing tribe. So this cool stuff and marine stuff is a very ancient thing for human culture. Young men feel the urge to go to the combat zone, not to prove themselves because they watched too many B movies with Dolph Lundgren and Bruce Willis, but because it is part of their psychology, deep instinct inherited from their ancestors. And maybe if you live in egalitarian society, that's the right thing to do, because it's the only route for you to survive, to become a part of the tribe. But in nowadays, the situation changed. In fact, the Gyllenhaal's hero's choice is a very poor choice. He did not become a warrior. He did not kill an enemy, and he wouldn't become a warrior even if he killed somebody. And he experienced more absurd than in his usual life than at the army. Another way of saying the initiation thing is saying that he wanted to escape the absurdity and mundane life, the absurdity of that mundane life that he had in his previous life. But instead got into war zone, which actually has the highest degree of absurdity and no epic side in it. In one of the ending scenes of the film, fellow soldiers of Jake Gyllenhaal's hero are shown to return to their mundane lives, which are very simple lives, and Gyllenhaal's here is shown in a dark room, which, as you can say, belongs to a guy from the intellectual background. But he is completely alone, and he sort of recalls his memories from his days as a soldier, saying he always be a marine inside of himself. I think that's sort of a sarcastic comment to the film. This scene where he is alone in the dark room shows that he is actually broken, a spiritually broken person who made a wrong choice and made a false initiation for himself instead of the real initiation. And as he refused college, he did not start sort of a real intellectual initiation and will remain sort of the ghost on the borderline of these two worlds, the sacred world and the usual absurd world. The film is not a war movie, it's more a spiritual essay, and I find it quite interesting. Thank you for your attention, hope you like my content. Goodbye.